The all-white living room smelled like eucalyptus, and something else I couldn't quite place. Some trendy essential oil diffuser, probably. I stood there holding a corner of the furniture blanket, my son Michael on the other end, as we carefully maneuvered the antique vanity through the doorway of what was supposed to be Emma's new bedroom. Wait, Mom, what is that? Brittany's voice cut through the air before we'd even set it down. She appeared in the doorway, her linen jumpsuit somehow still pristine despite helping them move in all morning. Her eyes went from the vanity to me, and I saw something flicker across her face. Not curiosity, not interest, something closer to horror. It's an antique vanity, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, for Emma's room. I've been working on it we live a clutter-free lifestyle, Margaret. She said my name the way you'd say a word you'd just learned in a foreign language. Everything in this house is intentional. Scandinavian, modern, this. She gestured at the vanity like it was a piece of garbage I'd dragged in from the curb. This doesn't fit our aesthetic. I looked at Michael. He was studying the floor. My vanity sat there between us. 6 months of work. The curved legs I'd stripped and refinished by hand. The mirror I'd had resilvered. The tiny drawers I'd lined with vintage wallpaper I'd found at an estate sale. The brass pulls I'd polished until they gleamed like gold. Emma asked for a vanity, I said quietly. For her birthday. She showed me a picture. She showed you a picture of a modern floating shelf with a ring light, Brittany interrupted. Not this. She waved her hand again. I appreciate the thought, Margaret, but we just can't. It's too much, too old, too ornate. It would throw off the entire flow of her space. Maybe we could just ask Emma, Michael started, but Brittany shot him a look. Emma's 14. She doesn't know what works in a space. That's literally my job. Brittany was an interior designer. She'd made sure everyone knew it approximately 7 minutes after Michael introduced us. I've spent months planning this house. Every piece serves a purpose. Every color has meaning. I can't have random clutter contradicting the entire vision. Random clutter. 6 months of my life. Random clutter. I'd found the vanity at an estate sale back in March. The woman who'd owned it had been a teacher, like me. Died at 93. Her granddaughter had told me it had been in her grandmother's bedroom since 1952. The old woman had sat at that vanity every morning, the granddaughter said, pinning her hair, putting on her lipstick, reading letters from friends who'd moved away. I'd seen past the water damage and the scratches. I'd seen what it could be, what it had been, what it deserved to be again. And I'd thought of Emma, 14 years old, my only grandchild, recently telling me she was really into vintage stuff, but her mom thought it was a phase. I'd watched Emma's face light up when I showed her pictures of the vanity in progress. She'd asked questions. She'd wanted to know its history. She'd said, "Grandma, this is so much cooler than anything from IKEA." But now here was Brittany, calling it clutter. "I'll take it back home," I heard myself say. The words felt like stones in my mouth. "I'm sorry for the confusion. Thanks for understanding, Margaret." Brittany was already turning away, scrolling on her phone. "We're just very intentional about what we bring into our space. I'm sure you get it." Michael helped me load it back into my truck without saying much of anything. When we finished, he gave me a quick, awkward side hug. "Sorry, Mom. You know how she is about the house stuff." Yes, I knew how she was about the house stuff, and the food stuff, and the parenting stuff, and pretty much everything else. My son had somehow shrunk since marrying her, like he was trying to take up less space. "Where's Emma?" I asked. "At a friend's house. Probably better you know how she gets emotional." I did know. Emma felt things deeply, like I did, like her grandfather had, before he died 2 years ago. I drove home with the vanity in the truck bed, wrapped carefully in blankets, pulled into my garage, looked at it sitting there, and I cried. Not pretty crying. The kind where you can't catch your breath. The kind where you wonder if you're ever going to feel okay again. Because it wasn't really about the vanity. It was about how it felt to spend half a year putting love into something and having it dismissed in 30 seconds. It was about watching my son stand there and say nothing. It was about knowing my granddaughter had asked for this, had wanted this, and now wouldn't get it because her mother had decided it didn't match the couch. I didn't call. I didn't text. I just stopped. Stopped dropping by with groceries. Stopped offering to pick Emma up from soccer. Stopped asking if they needed help with anything. Michael had made his choice clear when he'd stood there silent. If I wasn't welcome, I wouldn't force it. 3 weeks went by. Then 4. Then my phone buzzed one Tuesday afternoon. Emma. Grandma? Can we talk? Her voice sounded small. Younger than 14. Of course, sweetheart. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I miss you. You haven't been over. Mom said you were busy, but I checked with Uncle Pete and he said you weren't doing anything special, so I thought, maybe. She trailed off. Did I do something wrong? My heart cracked right down the middle. No, baby. No. You didn't do anything wrong. Then why won't you visit? Dad keeps saying you're busy, but you always made time before, and I really wanted to show you my room. Mom picked out everything, but it's so boring. Everything's beige and white, and there's literally nowhere to put my stuff. I can't even hang posters because she says it'll damage the walls. And I asked about the vanity, the one you were making for me, and Mom said it didn't fit the house, but I don't understand why because it's my room and I really wanted it, and she was crying now. Actually crying. Emma, sweetheart, take a breath. I heard her inhale shakily. I just miss you, Grandma. I miss you too. I looked at the vanity, still sitting in my garage, still beautiful, still unwanted. Do you want to come over here? See it? The vanity's here. Really? Her voice lifted. Can I? I'll ask Mom. Actually, don't. Ask your dad. Tell him you want to visit Grandma this weekend, Saturday. I'll make lasagna. There was a pause. Mom doesn't let me eat pasta. She says white carbs are inflammatory. Of course she did. Well, at Grandma's house, we eat what we want. Tell your dad you're coming Saturday at noon. I'll pick you up. When I pulled up Saturday, Emma was waiting on the porch. She climbed into my truck before either of her parents could come outside, though I saw Brittany watching through the window, her face unreadable. Emma talked the entire drive, about school, about how her room felt like a hotel room, about how she'd tried to put up some string lights and her mom had taken them down because they weren't part of the design plan, about how she missed Grandpa and wished he could see her play soccer because Dad always showed up late and Mom was usually on her phone. And then we pulled into my garage and she saw it. The vanity. She went completely silent. Just walked over to it, slowly, like she was approaching something in a museum. Ran her fingers over the carved details on the drawers, touched the mirror, pulled out the little velvet-lined compartments. Grandma. Her voice was barely a whisper. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I'd forgotten how good it felt to have someone actually see something you'd made. To have them understand not just the object, but the time, the care, the love built into every inch of it. Sit down, I said, pulling out the little stool that went with it. She sat, looked at herself in the mirror. The afternoon light came through the garage window and hit the brass pulls just right, and for a second, I saw what the original owner must have seen in 1952. A young woman at her vanity, a whole life ahead of her. Why didn't Mom want this? Emma asked softly. How do you explain to a 14-year-old that some people value appearance over meaning? That some people see objects as decoration rather than connection? That her mother had chosen aesthetics over her actual daughter's wishes? Your mom has very specific ideas about how things should look, I said carefully. And this doesn't fit that vision. But it's not her room. It's mine. Emma's voice had an edge now. She chose literally everything in there. The bed, the desk, the curtains. All of it's white or beige or natural linen or whatever. I feel like I'm living in a waiting room. And the one thing I actually wanted, she gestured at the vanity. She said no. I sat down on a storage box nearby. I know, sweetheart. Is this why you stopped coming over? I looked at this girl, nearly a young woman. Really, who somehow saw right through all the adult pretense to the hurt underneath. Partly, I admitted. I felt like I wasn't welcome anymore, but I want you there. I don't care what Mom wants. You're my grandma. Your mom is your mother. And your dad. Your dad has to support her decisions. Even when they're stupid? I couldn't help smiling a little. Even then, Emma was quiet for a moment, studying the vanity. Then she said, "Can I come here? To your house? When I want to use it? You can come here whenever you want, sweetheart." What if Mom says no? Then we'll figure it out. She visited twice more that month, then 3 times the next month. Each time, she'd spend hours in my garage. I'd moved a reading chair in there, made it cozy sitting at the vanity, doing her makeup, her homework, sometimes just staring at her reflection and thinking whatever 14-year-olds think about. And each time, she'd take a photo, post it on her Instagram with hashtags like number vintage aesthetic, number antique vibes, number grand mash house. I didn't think much of it until Michael called one evening. "Mom, we need to talk about Emma." My heart sank. "What happened?" "Nothing happened. It's just, she's been spending a lot of time at your place, and Brittany thinks it's sending the wrong message about our lifestyle choices." "Your lifestyle choices?" "What?" "You said our lifestyle choices, but they're Brittany's choices, aren't they? The White House, the minimalism, the no carbs rule, the no clutter rule. When did you become someone who cares about any of that?" Silence. "I'm just saying, Mom, it would be easier if you and Brittany could get on the same page about things." "Michael, I've been on your page for 37 years. I changed your diapers. I drove you to baseball practice. I helped pay for your college. I babysat Emma when you needed me. I've shown up for every birthday, every holiday, every crisis. And the one time I make something with my own hands for my granddaughter, your daughter, it gets rejected because it's not minimalist enough. So, no, I'm not getting on Brittany's page. I'm staying on my own page, where people are more important than decor." I heard him take a breath to respond, but I kept going. "And Emma comes here because she feels like she has a voice here, because I ask her what she wants instead of telling her what she should want, because I let her be herself instead of making her fit into some Instagram perfect aesthetic. If that's a problem for Brittany, then Brittany and I need to have a very different conversation." More silence. Then quietly, "I'm sorry, Mom." "For what?" "For not saying anything. That day, when Brittany wouldn't let you bring in the vanity, I should have said something. Emma told me how excited she was about it, and I didn't want to deal with the fight, you know? Brittany gets so intense about the house stuff, and it's easier to just go along," and he stopped. "That's not an excuse. I'm sorry. It was something. Not everything, but something." "Thank you," I said. Can I see it? The vanity? Emma's been posting pictures and it looks really nice. Come by tomorrow. Bring Emma." They came. Michael stood in my garage, hands in his pockets, looking at the vanity like he was seeing it for the first time. "Mom, wow, this is really beautiful." "I know. The detail is incredible." "How long did this take you?" 6 months, give or take." He winced. "And Brittany Yes." Emma was already sitting at the vanity, showing her dad the little compartments, the original hardware, the way the mirror tilted just so. She was explaining the history I'd told her, the original owner, the estate sale, the restoration process. Michael watched his daughter, and I watched Michael, and I saw something shift in his face, like he was remembering something he'd forgotten, about what mattered, about who his daughter actually was versus who Brittany wanted her to be. "I think," he said slowly, "we might need to have a conversation at home about Emma's room, about letting her have some say in her own space." "You think?" He gave me a look that was pure teenage eye roll, even at 37. "Yes, Mom, I think." It wasn't a revolution. Brittany didn't suddenly show up at my door with an apology and a plate of cookies. But things shifted. Gradually, Emma's room acquired some color, A vintage poster. String lights that Brittany grudgingly approved because they were warm-toned and worked with the space. Small victories, and Emma kept coming to my house, kept sitting at that vanity, started bringing her friends over, and they'd all crowd around it, taking photos, asking where I'd found it, saying how cool it was that I'd restored it myself. One of her friends asked if I could help her find a piece for her own room. Then another. Soon I was scouring estate sales and antique shops every weekend, finding pieces that needed love, bringing them back to life. My garage became a workshop. My hobby became something more. Emma made a TikTok about the vanity, showed the before pictures I'd taken, the process, the after, talked about her grandma who rescues old furniture and gives it a second life. It got 300,000 views, then 500,000, then more. People started messaging me, asking if I sold pieces, asking if I did custom work, asking where I was located. At 65 years old, completely by accident, I'd stumbled into something like a business. Michael helped me set up an Etsy shop. Maggie's Restorations. Emma took the photos. Even Brittany, in a move that shocked everyone, offered to help with brand strategy, because apparently watching me become unintentionally internet famous had triggered some professional curiosity about authentic vintage marketing. I didn't say yes to the brand strategy thing, but I appreciated the offer, sort of. The first piece I sold was a dresser I'd refinished in a pale sage green. A young woman in Portland bought it for her daughter's nursery, sent me a photo of it in place, with a handwritten note. "Thank you for making something so beautiful. It's going to be in our family for generations." That night, I sat in my garage workshop, surrounded by half-finished projects, and thought about what I'd learned. You can't make people appreciate what you create. You can't force them to understand the value of time and care and love built into something made by hand. You can't control whether they see beauty or clutter when they look at your work. But you can choose where you invest that time and care and love. You can choose to offer it only to people who recognize its worth. You can choose to stop pouring yourself into spaces that don't welcome you. I'd spent so much of my life trying to fit into other people's vision of what I should be. The perfect grandmother, the helpful mother-in-law, the supportive mother who never made waves. And maybe I'd been some of those things. But I'd also disappeared a little, folded myself smaller and smaller until I wasn't sure who I was anymore, outside of who everyone else needed me to be. The vanity had been a gift for Emma, but it had also been a gift for myself. A reminder that I had hands that could build, eyes that could see potential, a heart that still knew how to create something beautiful out of broken things. And if Brittany couldn't see that, well, that was okay. Because Emma saw it, and the people who bought my pieces saw it. And most importantly, I saw it. 6 months after that day in Brittany's all-white living room, Emma came over after school. She'd gotten her license recently and drove herself now in the old Honda her dad had given her. She came into the garage where I was stripping paint off a 1940s telephone table. "Grandma, you'll never guess what happened." I looked up. She was grinning. "Mom asked if you could restore a piece for the living room." I put down my scraper. "What?" "Yeah. One of her design clients saw my TikTok, saw the vanity, and asked if Mom knew the person who did the restoration work. The client wants to hire you for her entire house. She's got this old Victorian and wants everything restored, not replaced. It's like a $30,000 project, and Mom's trying to play it cool, but I could tell she was impressed. She asked if you'd meet with the client, and maybe, if you did. She wondered if you'd consider doing something for our house. Something authentically vintage that respects the original craftsmanship," were her exact words. I laughed. Actually laughed. "She said that?" I swear. I almost fell over. "What did you tell her?" Emma shrugged, still grinning. "I said you were pretty busy, but I'd ask." "Which is true. You are busy. You've got like 6 projects lined up." "I do." "So, will you meet with the client?" I thought about it. Thought about Brittany calling my work clutter 6 months ago. Thought about her calling it authentically vintage now. Thought about how funny it was that the same object could be worthless or valuable depending on who was looking at it and what they needed it to be. "I'll meet with the client," I said, "and I'll think about doing something for your house." "But Emma?" "Yeah? The vanity stays here, in my garage. Your space, not hers." Emma's grin got even wider. "Deal." She helped me finish stripping the telephone table, asking questions about technique, about where I'd learned to do this, about whether I'd teach her, and I realized this was the gift I'd actually been giving. Not the vanity, not the furniture, but the knowledge that you could take something broken and abandoned and see its worth when no one else did. That you could be patient and careful and deliberate and create beauty, that you could choose what mattered to you instead of accepting what everyone else said should matter. That night, after Emma left, I stood in my garage workshop and looked around, at the pieces in progress, at the vanity, still sitting in its corner, where Emma used it several times a week, at the tools I'd collected, at the life I was building, piece by piece. At 65 years old, my phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "BTU, my friend Zoe's grandma wants to know if you could look at a cedar chest that's been in her family since like 1890. I gave her your info. Love you, Grandma." I smiled, typed back, "Love you too, sweetheart. Send her my number." And then I got back to work. Because I had a telephone table to finish, and a client to meet, and a life to live that was finally, actually mine. Not clutter-free, not minimalist, not perfect, but intentional in all the ways that actually mattered.